In the boundless expanse of the cosmos, where administrative processes flourished like an uncontrollable weed, the Galactic Standards Committee had mastered the art of complicating the straightforward. Situated in a building that looked like the offspring of a filing cabinet and a grand church, the GSC headquarters was in orbit around a star that was, appropriately, neither exceptionally luminous nor noteworthy. The committee was composed of delegates from the 17 distinct species of galactic civilization, a title they had bestowed upon themselves after countless eons of deliberation, and no fewer than 3 small-scale interstellar skirmishes over the correct layout of the certification document. These 17 species shared a common trait. They had all developed at a speed that made continental drift seem hasty. The Sentient Integration Assessment, announced High Administrator Zix Belfoy-Toon, a jelly-like entity of see-through tissue who conveyed messages through shifts in color and gurgling noises, is the foundation of our society. The remaining 16 committee members vibrated in agreement. The SIA, as it was known in the galaxy's most tiresome groups, was their greatest accomplishment. A thorough examination created to determine if a newly found sentient species was prepared to become part of the Galactic Society. It has excluded exactly 94.3% of all candidates. Zix Belfoy-Toon continued, showcasing a dark purple shade that signified bureaucratic contentment. Only the most enduring, systematic, and rule-abiding species may become part of our group. What Zix Belfoy-Toon failed to mention was that most of the other 5.7% had gained entry due to administrative errors, including the Votians, who were accepted after their application was confused for an unusually large lunch order. At the heart of the SIA was the notorious 100-year survival course, a trial so inherently monotonous that most species either surrendered or transformed into new life forms before finishing. The course took up an entire moon that the committee had emptied and changed into what they believed was the ultimate test of sentient capability. Let's go over the course details for the 97th time this cycle, proposed Sub-Administrator Glee, a somewhat insect-like creature whose species had grown specialized organs specifically for handling paperwork. The committee members collectively shifted their different appendages in agreement. Nothing made them happier than revisiting things they had already gone over many times. A holographic screen lit up in the middle of their round chamber, displaying the inside of the man-made moon. The course was split into 100 sections, each meant to evaluate a particular trait the committee had decided was crucial for galactic citizenship. Zone 1. Form completion and submission. Expected duration, 1 year. Zone 2. Patience evaluation through deliberate bureaucratic holdups. Expected duration, 2 years. Zone 3 to 25. Various physical survival tests based on different planetary environments. Expected duration, 23 years. Zone 26 to 50. Cultural integration and linguistic conformity examinations. Expected duration, 25 years. Zone 51 to 75. Technological restraint and ethical application evaluations. Expected duration, 25 years. Zone 76 to 99. Advanced cooperation with simulated committee delegates. Expected duration, 24 years. Zone 100. Final citizenship application submission and handling. Expected duration, indefinitely pending, but officially listed as under review. It is flawless, wheezed Secondary Vice Chair Being More Lux, a crystalline entity who had been at the course's initial planning meeting some 12,000 years prior. Not a single species has finished it in under 98 years, 3 months, and 17 days. The Taurians were close, noted Assistant Undersecretary Bliv, essentially a sentient plant with an odd fondness for statistical deviations. The Taurians were deceitful, huffed Zix Belfoy-Toon, turning a disapproving shade of purple. They sent successive generations instead of the same individuals, a clear breach of Section 12, Paragraph 7, Subclause 4. What the committee failed to realize, or perhaps intentionally overlooked, was that their examinations selected not for the traits that made civilizations great, but for those that made them incredibly compatible with bureaucracy. Species that appreciated innovation, effectiveness, or even basic common sense were eliminated in the first few zones. The survival tests themselves were not especially hard for any reasonably advanced civilization. The real difficulty was putting up with the paperwork, waiting times, and intentional inefficiencies built into every phase. Before moving into each new zone, applicants had to provide detailed reports about their experiences in the previous zone, which would then be processed, read, purposefully misplaced, and requested again by the committee's extensive administrative system. Over thousands of years, many species had tried the course. Most gave up within the first 10 years. Some continued for 50 years or more before their representatives either passed away from old age or, more often, from extreme boredom. A few managed to finish the course, joining the galactic community as junior members, only to find out that actual galactic citizenship involved even more paperwork. "And now, to the matter at hand," Zix Belleton said, turning a formal green color. "We have gotten an application from a new species. They refer to themselves as humans." A ripple of amused bubbling spread throughout the chamber. "From the reports," continued Junior Assistant Tribunal Member Quex, a being made mostly of sendient gas held within a pressurized suit, "they seem to be two-legged carbon-based life forms with remarkably brief lifespans. Their average individual exists for less than a single century." This revelation was met with what passed for loud laughter among the committee. A mix of color changes, vapor releases, crystalline ringing, and the rustling of leaves. "They wish to attempt the 100-year survival course," Zix Belfoy Toon croaked, momentarily losing control of shape integrity. "With lifespans shorter than the course itself, perhaps they didn't understand the time requirement," suggested Morlux kindly. "Many basic species have difficulty with the idea of cosmic standard time." "Or perhaps," mused Bliv, "they plan to use successive generations like the Tutorians tried." Zix Belfoy Tun's body rippled with bureaucratic anger. "The rules are clear. The same individuals must start and finish the course. No substitutions, no replacements." "Should we reject their application immediately?" asked Glee, already getting the standard 50-page rejection form ready. After thinking for a moment, Zix Belfoy Toon pulsed a negative. No, let them try. It will be educational for them and maybe entertaining for us. It has been several decades since we've had a truly hopeless applicant. It keeps the administrative staff sharp." The committee members signaled their agreement, and the application was stamped with 17 distinct approval markings, filed in triplicate, misplaced, found again, reprocessed, and so on. Little did they realize that this particular application would cause the biggest disruption in the Galactic Standards Committee's 12,000-year history, all because humans, as a species, had mastered the skill of hating unnecessary paperwork even more than they had mastered creating it. 3 standard galactic months after their application had been handled, misplaced, found in the digestive system of a mail-sorting creature, reprocessed, and finally approved, the human delegation arrived at the testing moon. Their ship, a thrown-together collection of mismatched parts that appeared to have been created by a group of engineers who communicated solely through interpretive dance, somehow managed to land without blowing up, a feat that several committee observers found disappointing. "They've arrived in a vehicle," reported Junior Observation Technician Vel, whose job mainly involved watching monitors and being constantly unimpressed. "That barely counts as a spacecraft," remarked Chief Assessment Officer Quibblewicks, a floating cloud of sentient particles who had overseen exactly 3,427 failed assessments and was hoping to reach an even 3,500 before retiring. "Are those duct tape repairs?" The observation room became quiet as the first humans came out of their vessel. There were 5 of them, a surprisingly small group by galactic standards, where some species sent thousands of representatives just to make sure that at least a few would survive the century-long evaluation. "They're so fleshy," observed Vel with a hint of disgust. "And they seem to be leaking various fluids." "That's called sweating, according to the preliminary biological data," explained Quibblewicks. "Apparently they do it constantly, revolting." The humans, completely unaware of the commentary about their bodily functions, were busy taking equipment out of their ship. Unlike the methodical, carefully organized method that most species used, often spending the first month just arranging their supplies, The humans seemed to be grabbing things randomly and sometimes throwing items to each other. "Are they playing while they work?" asked Assistant Observation Technician Blurb, the newest member of the assessment team. "Inefficient and unprofessional," sniffed Quibblewicks. "Make a note of that in the report." One of the humans, noticeable by a particularly vibrant outer covering that the observers would later find out was called a Hawaiian shirt, walked up to the entrance terminal for the assessment course. The terminal was purposefully created to be intimidating, a 20-foot pillar of dark metal with rules written in 17 different languages, none of which were from Earth. "Welcome, human. Representatives," the terminal intoned in a voice specifically tuned to cause mild existential dread. "You are about to start the Sentient Integration Assessment, a thorough evaluation of your species' worthiness to join the galactic community. This assessment is projected to take 100 standard galactic years to finish." The human in the colorful shirt leaned toward one of their companions and said something that the observation microphones picked up as, "Bet you a case of beer we can do it in a week." This statement caused such confusion among the observation team that 3 different translation algorithms crashed at the same time. "Did they not understand the time frame?" asked Blurb. "Perhaps their time sense is flawed," suggested Vel. "Many basic species have trouble with large numbers." The terminal continued its preset speech. "Zone 1 consists of the correct completion and submission of the preliminary assessment forms. You will find the required documentation in Storage Unit Alpha. Expected completion time, 1 standard galactic year." The human delegation exchanged looks that the observation team couldn't decipher, but that any human would have recognized as a mix of amusement and determination. "Let the assessment begin," announced the terminal, and the large doors to Zone 1 slid open with deliberate, intimidating slowness. The humans went in, and the observation team got ready for what they thought would be a year of watching aliens struggle with paperwork. Storage Unit Alpha held exactly 1 million forms, each with 200 questions in tiny print, needing answers in triplicate. Most species assigned large teams just to read through the forms, spending months arranging them into groups before even trying to fill them out. The humans took a different approach. "Are they dividing the forms without categorizing them first?" gasped Blurb, watching as the 5 humans simply split the huge pile into roughly equal stacks. "This is unheard of," muttered Quibblewicks. "They'll never be able to keep consistency across responses without a unified cataloging system." But the humans weren't just dividing the work. They were skimming the forms, marking patterns, and creating shortcuts. One of them brought out a small device that they connected to an equally small computer terminal they'd brought with them. "What is that?" demanded Vel, zooming the observation camera in. "It seems to be some kind of scanning technology," replied Blurb, checking the database. "But they can't possibly be—" "They're scanning the forms," interrupted Quibblewicks in a voice that suggested this was like defiling a sacred temple. "And that device appears to be reading and analyzing the text." Within 3 hours, the humans had scanned every form in Storage Unit Alpha. By hour 5, their computer was producing completed forms with mechanical efficiency. "This is outrageous," sputtered Quibblewicks, particles swirling in agitation. "The forms are meant to be filled out by hand, using the traditional ink-secreting appendage of each species." "Technically," noted Blurb, consulting the rulebook, "there's no specific rule against automated form completion. The requirement is simply that all forms must be finished correctly and submitted in the right order." By hour 12, the humans had not only finished all 1 million forms, but had also found out that only about 50,000 of them were actually unique. The rest were duplicates with slightly different layouts or question order. "They've finished the forms," reported Vel, a note of disbelief in their voice. "All of them." "Impossible," declared Quibblewicks. "No species has ever completed Zone 1 in less than 8 months. The forms must be filled out incorrectly." But a quick check by the automated system showed that every form had been completed correctly, with all necessary information provided in the proper format. The human in the colorful shirt went up to the submission terminal at the end of Zone 1 and pressed the completion button. The terminal, which had been programmed to only activate after at least 11 months, responded with an error message. Error, premature completion attempt detected. Please continue form processing for 364 more days. The humans huddled in discussion for about 3 minutes. Then, one of them connected a different device to the terminal. After a series of quick keystrokes, the error message vanished, replaced by a processing indicator. "They're hacking the system!" exclaimed Vel, genuine emotion breaking through their professional detachment. That's cheating," sputtered Quibblewicks. "Is it?" asked Blurb, still consulting the rulebook. "The rules state that applicants must successfully interface with and meet the requirements of each zone terminal. It doesn't specify how that interface should happen." The doors to Zone 2 slid open, and the humans proceeded through, leaving the observation team in stunned silence. "I should contact the committee," said Quibblewicks finally. "This is unprecedented." Zone 2 was created to test patience through intentional bureaucratic delays. Applicants were required to submit requests for permission to move to various checkpoints, with each request theoretically taking between 30 and 90 days to process. The humans took one look at the zone's layout, promptly ignored all the designated request submission terminals, and began systematically bypassing the checkpoints by, in what would become a recurring theme, finding exploits in the system architecture that 17 species across 12,000 years had somehow overlooked. By hour 18 of the assessment, the humans had completed both Zone 1 and Zone 2. The committee, which had been hastily called for an emergency session, watched the observation feeds with growing horror. "This is impossible," declared Zix Belfoy-Toon, cycling through colors so quickly that several junior committee members had to look away to avoid nausea. "No species can bypass the patience assessment. It's designed to be unbypassable." "Apparently," remarked Bliv dryly, "nobody informed the humans of this fact." As the human delegation entered Zone 3, the first of the actual survival challenges, the committee settled in for what they hoped would be at least some delay in this unprecedented speedrun of their meticulously designed test. They would be disappointed. By hour 20 of the assessment, the entire Galactic Standards Committee had given up all pretense of dignified bureaucratic procedure and was collectively losing their various biological equivalents of minds. The observation chamber, originally designed to hold only the assessment team, now overflowed with committee members of all shapes, sizes, and states of matter. "They're already in Zone 27, exclaimed Zix Belfoy-Toon, who had turned a shade of distressed purple previously unseen in their species. How did they get through 23 environmental survival zones in under 2 hours? The answer, had anyone been calm enough to provide it, was a combination of factors that the committee had never anticipated. Extensive preparation, specialized knowledge, creative problem-solving, and a complete disregard for doing things the right way. In Zone 3, a volcanic environment designed to test heat resistance and resource management, the humans had spent exactly 12 minutes setting up what they called a geothermal power generator, then used the resulting energy to power climate control suits that made the extreme environment irrelevant. "That's not how you're supposed to handle a volcanic challenge," Quibblewicks had protested, particles vibrating in outrage. "They're meant to gradually adapt through carefully monitored exposure, developing heat resistance over time." "Is there a regulation stating that specifically?" Blurb had asked, still diligently checking the rulebook. There wasn't. In Zone 8, an aquatic environment with toxic elements that most species spent years carefully filtering out, one of the humans had pulled out a device they called a portable reverse osmosis system and had clean water within minutes. In Zone 17, a maze of gravitational anomalies designed to teach careful navigation over at least 14 months. The humans had simply recalibrated their equipment to use the gravitational fluctuations to move faster, essentially turning the entire zone into what one of them called the galaxy's best roller coaster. "This can't be happening," moaned secondary vice chair Being More Lux, whose crystalline structure had developed stress fractures from the shock. "Perhaps," ventured Assistant Undersecretary Bliv, whose plant-like composure remained intact. "That's precisely why they're succeeding." The human in the Hawaiian shirt, whom the observers had now identified as the delegation leader, had developed a habit of looking directly into observation cameras whenever they discovered a particularly elegant shortcut, giving a small smile and a thumbs-up gesture that the committee found inexplicably infuriating. "They know we're watching," hissed Junior Assistant Tribunal Member Quex, gas roiling within their containment suit. "They're mocking us." "Nonsense," replied Bliv reasonably. "They're simply enjoying themselves." This concept, enjoying an assessment that was specifically designed to be grueling and tedious, was so alien to the committee that several members required medical attention. As the humans blazed through the cultural and linguistic zones in what appeared to be a deliberate parody of test-taking, the committee convened an emergency subcommittee to analyze exactly how this disaster had occurred. "Their approach to Zone 33 is particularly concerning," reported cultural assessment specialist Vun, a being composed of animated textiles who specialized in evaluating species adaptability to galactic cultural norms. Instead of spending the required 3 years learning the 712 standardized cultural interaction protocols, they've somehow condensed each protocol into what they're calling memes and are using pattern recognition to apply them. "Memes?" repeated Zix Belfoytoon faintly. "Simplified cultural concepts expressed through humorous imagery," explained Vun, displaying an example that made several committee members recoil in horror. "They're learning through jokes?" objected Morlux. "But the cultural protocols are meant to be internalized through solemn contemplation and repetitive practice, not through whatever this is." "And yet," noted Bliv, examining the assessment data, "their protocol implementation success rate is 97.4%. That's higher than any previous applicant. By hour 23, the humans had reached Zone 59, the beginning of the Technological Restraint and Ethical Application Assessment section. Here, at last, the committee expected some delay. These zones were designed to ensure that species would use technology responsibly, requiring careful consideration of ethical implications before implementing technological solutions. The first challenge involved a simulated ecosystem on the verge of collapse, with applicants required to apply minimal technological intervention while preserving biodiversity. Most species spent years carefully modeling potential approaches before implementing the most conservative solution. The humans took one look at the simulation parameters, immediately identified it as analogous to several Earth ecosystems, and implemented a solution based on what they called lessons learned the hard way back home. 4 minutes, whispered Quibblewix in disbelief. They restored the simulated ecosystem in 4 minutes. And they used 70% less technology than the model solution, added Blurb, who had given up consulting the rulebook and was now simply documenting the ongoing catastrophe. "How?" demanded Zix Belfoytoon. "They introduced 3 specimens the simulation classifies as wolves and adjusted the water flow patterns," explained Blurb. "Apparently, this approach is based on something called Yellowstone rewilding that they implemented on their homeworld." The committee's desperation reached new heights as the humans approached Zone 76, the beginning of the Advanced Cooperation section. These zones were specifically designed to test how well species could work with the convoluted bureaucratic structures of the Galactic Standards Committee itself. Most applicants spent decades learning to navigate the intentionally obtuse and often contradictory regulations. The humans, however, had a different approach. "Are they bringing gifts to the simulated committee representatives?" asked Vun, watching in disbelief as the humans presented various Earth items to the holographic officials. "Technically, it's called bribery," corrected Blurb, consulting a human cultural database. "A practice of offering goods or services in exchange for favorable treatment." "That's forbidden," exclaimed Quibblewix. "It undermines the entire assessment process." "Actually," interjected Bliv, who had been quietly reviewing the regulations, "there's no specific prohibition against it. The requirement is simply to achieve successful outcomes in negotiations with committee representatives. The method is not specified." "This is a disaster," moaned Zix Belfoytoon, cycling through distress colors so rapidly that they resembled a malfunctioning light display. "They'll reach Zone 100 by the end of the day at this rate." "Perhaps we should stop them," suggested Morlux desperately. "Cite some technical violation or system malfunction." On what grounds? Asked Bliv, who appeared to be the only committee member still capable of rational thought. They haven't violated any specific regulations. They've simply interpreted them creatively. Create new regulations, then, insisted Quex. That would require a full committee vote, followed by a 70-day public comment period, followed by implementation reviews, began Bliv, before being cut off by a collective groan. As Hour 24 approached, the humans reached Zone 99, the final challenge before the citizenship application submission. This zone was a comprehensive test that combined elements from all previous zones, designed to evaluate whether applicants had truly internalized the lessons of the assessment. Most species spent at least 5 years in this zone alone, carefully demonstrating their mastery of each required skill and protocol. The humans completed it in 17 minutes. How? Whispered Zix Belfoid Toon, now a pale, defeated shade of grayish-blue. They're not solving each challenge sequentially, explained Blurb, watching the monitoring feeds with something approaching admiration. They identified that the zone uses a single underlying simulation framework with shared parameters. Instead of addressing each challenge individually, they've created what they call a universal solver algorithm that exploits commonalities in the system architecture. That's not fair, protested Quibblewix. It's not. Specified as forbidden, countered Blurb automatically. As the humans approached the final zone, the committee fell into a stunned silence. In less than 24 hours, 5 humans had accomplished what was designed to take 100 years. Every assumption about intelligence, adaptability, and worthiness that the Galactic Standards Committee had built their entire assessment process upon had been systematically dismantled. They're about to enter Zone 100, announced Blurb unnecessarily, as every eye, optical sensor, electromagnetic receptor, and sensory appendage in the room was already fixed on the monitors. Zone 100, the final citizenship application submission and processing, was perhaps the committee's crowning achievement in bureaucratic obstruction. The application itself was relatively straightforward, but the processing system was designed with so many deliberate inefficiencies, redundant verification steps, and technical difficulties that no application had ever been processed in less than a decade. The humans entered the zone, took one look at the massive central processing unit, a computer system intentionally designed to use technology from 17 different eras, operating on 19 incompatible software platforms, and immediately began what the committee could only describe as a systematic violation of every principle of proper technology use. They're bypassing the interface entirely, reported Blurb, voice rising in pitch. They've physically opened the processing unit and are rewiring it. Can they do that? Asked someone in the back of the room. No, exclaimed several voices. Yes, corrected Bliv, still consulting regulations. The requirement is that the application must be processed through the central processing unit. It doesn't specify that the unit must remain in its original configuration. Within 20 minutes, the humans had reconfigured the processing unit into what appeared to be a much simpler, streamlined system. The human in the Hawaiian shirt connected their small computer device to it, tapped a few keys, and suddenly, impossibly, the completion indicator illuminated. The final assessment terminal activated, its solemn voice filling both the zone and the observation room. Assessment complete. Processing time, 24.7 standard hours. This is a new record by a factor of approximately 35,000. Congratulations, human representatives. You have successfully completed the Sentient Integration Assessment. Welcome to the galactic community. In the observation room, Zix Belfoy Toon slowly dissolved into a puddle of gelatinous despair. The aftermath of humanity's 25-hour assessment completion was nothing short of a galactic bureaucratic meltdown. The committee, once a pillar of cosmic order, now resembled a support group for traumatized administrators. We must invalidate the results, insisted Quex, whose containment suit now resembled an overinflated balloon. On what grounds? Countered Bliv reasonably. They exploited loopholes, yes, but violated no specific regulations. The humans, meanwhile, celebrated with their Earth beverages, exchanging what xenobiologists identified as high fives and fist bumps. When finally meeting with the committee, the human leader, still sporting that eye-searing Hawaiian shirt, now adorned with snack stains, smiled disarmingly. "We meant no disrespect to your traditions," they assured the committee. "We simply demonstrated what humanity offers: innovation, adaptability, and efficiency." "Efficiency," muttered Quibblewicks with horror. "A dangerous concept." In the end, humanity was grudgingly admitted to the galactic community with unprecedented speed, but also with 17 pages of cautionary footnotes and a special observation status that would supposedly last a century. It took the committee 3 weeks to realize the humans had already hacked the observation systems, reclassified their own status, and begun improving various galactic infrastructure systems without permission. The universe would never be the same,